America qualifiers. This is stage 2, and only 2 players from today are going to make it through to go to IEM and play. We'll see who those are. For now, though, first best of 3 of the day continues here in the winners bracket. Spawning in the top right corner of the map from Evil Geniuses, it is the blue Terran player, Xenocider.
And in the bottom left, we've got our red Terran player. Let's see if he can go for the clean sweep. He's looking pretty damn good in game 1. It is, of course, CM Storm's Polt.
You know, I wouldn't argue that he's looking pretty good. I don't know about that clean sweep, though, Hampshire. I mean, Xenocider made a couple mistakes, granted, where he's human, we're human, etc. But he also played really well. If we can consider for a fact that maybe it hadn't been those four devastating medevac losses over the course of 10 minutes, full of Marines, if he had those available for his army, maybe, just maybe, then he wouldn't have had the insufficient supply to constantly attack Polt. I mean, there was a lot of what-ifs and could-have-beens, but I think Xenocider played overall pretty well that last game, quite frankly. Just started falling apart with the... You know what? I want to say skill, but Polt's Vikings were so lucky. Those were positioned so perfectly, and had Xenocider like flown any other direction, you know?
Yeah, indeed. Polt may be a little bit unfortunate there, but yeah, I mean, Xenocider, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, potential in his play to, you know, turn this around. And, you know, he was being quite active, like with drops, etc., and kind of, you know, catching Polt off guard, like a couple of times. So if Xenocider can pull those drops off again, you know, to try and get ahead in army and do economic damage, no, we could see him get back into this series. So yeah, there's definitely potential of Xenocider coming back here. So, you know, we'll have to see.
You know, I'm not gonna lie.
How he fares in this game.
After the Shellcraft Invitational, TvT on Waystation, it's never gonna live up to my expectations. That Beyond vs. Flash game, man, I don't even like. I'm surprised Total Biscuit and Toast had clean pants afterwards, if you know what I'm saying. Like, that was a ridiculous game, and I've seen the potential for greatness, and I can't help but feel like no matter what we do, it's never gonna live up to it. I'm just gonna go like take some antidepressants. I'm gonna be back real quick. No, but the reality is.
Yeah.
I mean, like, all my joking aside, it showed the fantastically wonderful side of TvT that a lot of people don't get to see. I don't know that we're going to necessarily see that here and now, but again, this is probably my favorite mirror matchup. So regardless of how this goes, I'm just happy to write it out.
Yeah, that series, you know, Beyond vs. Flash, and that game in particular in Waystation was indeed amazing. So we might not see an as amazing game here, but, you know, I'm sure it's going to be a great game nonetheless. And okay, we have Polt going for the double gas and that factory. I didn't quite see the gas timings of these guys. I think Xenocider's was like 12 racks, 13 gas or something, so a bit more conservative opener from him. And Polt going for that gas quite early. You might see Banshees here, I guess. I guess so.
I mean, there's such a... Sorry, I was busy copy-pasting the name of the gentleman who just subbed. Shout out to Achilles, 1986. Thank you very much. Banshees are such a big part of the matchup. The thing is, once upon a time, yeah, you could only really use them in the early game, and yeah, they were only really there to kill SCVs. But since then, I mean, again, I referenced the Banshee that Xenocider had last game. It almost killed a tank. It almost killed a lot of Marines. I mean, for Xenocider, there was a lot of almosts, granted, but it showed the potential of why a late-game Banshee can sometimes be, quite frankly, fantastic. There's the other end of the spectrum, too. You look at players like Ruff or Lily Canine. These are guys who play Terran a little bit more cheesy. They'll get like 5 Banshees, 7 Banshees, no problemo, and make them work. So, I mean, Xenocider and Polt are going to play the standard. We're not going to see the crazy tactics, but the thing is, a lot of these units, I mean, you see 1 Banshee per game, you might think it's a bad unit to have, but that's not the case in the slightest.
Yeah, for sure. Those Banshees can do some great work. But we have Xenocider now going for the Hellion production, so that's a bit interesting. We'll see if he makes that work. But as you know, you mentioned last game, Polt does go for that wall up, so having those depots there is going to be useful, and already having the Marines positioned on the high ground there.
Good scan out of Xeno too. Scans the tech lab, sees the tech, and he knows it's going to be cloaked Banshees as well. So we'll probably see either. The Viking come out first, so no Banshees for him. He's even got a turret. He's got 3 turrets coming down. Really paranoid here is Xenocider to protect this early expansion build.
Yeah, I kind of like that though, you know, 1 in the production line to kind of make sure he doesn't lose important add-ons, you know, or that, you know, the Marines in worst case scenario can be kept safe. He's moving out with the Marines now though, and then 1 turret in the mineral lines, of course, so just, yeah, I kind of like that, you know, rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the turret here, one of the biggest advantages it gives actually isn't even... The turret itself doesn't protect it, but the detection it gives to the Marines normally does. But the Marines aren't at home is the problem, is what I'm a little bit worried about here for poor Xenocider. As he pushes across the map, there's this nice spread on the top of the ramp. He's got no high ground vision. He can't really push up into this. Although he might catch a Banshee.
Yeah, oh, that would be really big. And Polt not paying attention, he's gonna...
Ooh,
cloak.
that last second
cloak. That was very close. Yeah,
Hellion dies on the ramp. Too well protected here is Polt, and Xenocider's going to head back home. Back at the main now, taking a little bit of damage from this Banshee.
Yeah, Polt already getting a nice 6 kills there with that Banshee and gets away with it. So Polt already accomplishing a lot more with his Banshee than Xenocider was able to do, you know, in the last game. But granted, when Polt was defending the Banshee of Xenocider, Polt did have all those Marines with him, and Xenocider was going out with his, so that's kind of why Polt was able to get those kills. But Polt's gonna get a nice, you know, little lead in this game by saving that Banshee and getting those kills on it.
You have to consider as well. I mean, he only killed 6 workers, but guys, Xenocider with 2 command centers is actually down in worker supply. This shouldn't be the case in the first place. For him, is of course dedicating a little bit more and getting supply blocked ever so slightly. Still supply blocked right now. Even every Terran player's felt this burn when you move on to that factory attack. But Xenocider, curiously enough, looks like he's going to be going for mech. I see with a big question mark. Mech is good. It can be good. But the thing is, I've seen Polt crush mech tons and tons of times in the past.
Yeah, Polt is, you know, good at finding weaknesses in his opponent's play when he, you know, wants to. And scans going down, might catch this Viking. Oh, those Vikings are so low.
Yeah, both the Banshees almost going to go down here. The Vikings, there'll be a nice little edge there, but dealing with this tank is going to be difficult. This tank, more than anything else, it zones out potential engagement areas. The Vikings can't dive forward. Xenocider is trying to get his own Banshee out, rightfully so, but it's not going to have cloak for a long time, so getting on top of this tank, he's just got to leave all these units on hold position, sadly. Oh no, this Banshee! What's it doing?
Yeah, and I mean, Xenocider, a bit of a mistake. They did lose like 2 Marines and a Hellion there by accident. They just ran into that, you know, tank line, and there's 2 tanks for Polt and none for Xenocider. There's one on the way, but it's not out yet, so Polt, you know, he smells weakness and goes forward here.
Yeah, if Xenocider actually had more Hellions in this position, this would be fantastic, but rallying to the bottom of the ramp like this just gives them away for free. Before he has a chance to get started, this command center, he's got to repair it, quite frankly. He can't even lift it to save it purely and entirely. There's Marines here.
Cloak will be finishing now for Xenocider, so he should cloak that Banshee. Ooh.
So here's the thing about Hellions that make them fantastic, guys. We've seen kind of the haha with like Daishi making 50 Hellions versus a Protoss and making it work. The same sort of logic is still somewhat applied here. If you've got enough Hellions, tanks don't do bonus damage to them, the Marines melt, and if you get in the dead zone fast enough, you actually don't take any tank fire whatsoever. So, unfortunately going to lose this Banshee, but it keeps the command center alive. And this is huge. If he had lost this command center, honest to God, this might even be game.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Oh, Polt has to be careful. I would like to see Polt just try and go home now, because if he stays any longer now, I feel like he's just going to lose his entire army, and he does lose that tank now, and does try to get away, but Xenocider has those Hellions, so he should be able to, you know, start chasing, but Polt is now coming with the reinforcements as well. Like, look at Polt's macro. He's mining, you know, fully saturated as natural. Both gas is up, and, you know, a few barracks at home, so...
I don't know if you got that. He picked up the tank to keep it from going down to the Banshee. That's actually a really slick move. I like that a lot.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Of course, Banshee now out of energy. Kind of sucks just a little bit, but... I mean, his Xenocider's production is starting to pick up. This is the downside to going mech. You tend to have very little production. Your other great weakness are drops of any variety, whether it's Doom or Harass. It's so hard to respond to it. In context, guys, it's just you've got a slow-moving army. It's going to be strong. It's going to be fantastic. And quite frankly, a lot of what Xenocider has is going to counter that of what Polt has. But he's not going to have positioning. He's not going to have mobility. And that's stripped away from you, a very difficult thing to make up for.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it's going to be hard. I mean, this map as well. I guess Xenocider could go for the island base, but that's always going to be so hard to protect, you know, if there's a bunch of dropships coming in. So, I mean, I'm not sure it would work if you did try and go for that, but if you just take some normal third base, like on the top left, then, I mean, that's going to be so hard to defend. It's such a long area that you need to cover with siege tanks that there's always going to be, like, one spot that's pretty weak to, you know, some stimmed marauders, so... Polt being ahead in macro, it feels like it's going to be very hard for Xenocider to try and get that third, which is so important when you're playing mech, because you really want that gas from the third base.
Yeah, it's I'd say a little more important for the gas in say TvZ if you're playing mech. TvT you're
Yeah.
going so Hellion heavy, you more mineral based than gas based. But if he wants to pick up his production, yes, I agree with you 1,000,000%. Problem is though, this is still a very awkward spot for Xenocider. He can't really push out. He's trying to get sieged up here in his main. I actually really like his defensive spot. The more time he buys himself, he'll be okay. But Polt, you know, he can go for a third behind this. He doesn't have to focus on tunneling in. He can do sort of like a soft contain move.
And he's picking up his production now, getting a few more barracks in there, and the third CC is finished now with the orbital, so he could lift that up and get the third down, which he does right after muling. So Polt's macro is, I mean, it's looking pretty fly.
Wow, you are such a white guy. Who uses that phrase without being sarcastic? Oh my god, that blue flame though is looking fantastic. If he takes out enough of the Marines, he can use the air to win through. We're gonna see Marauders made right now, guys, but Marauders have the most curious placement in TvT, where you don't build Marauders because they're good against tanks, but you build them simply because Hellions aren't good against them. Marauders have this weird dynamic where with enough of them, they're fantastic, but you then place a lot of your DPS in the siege tanks. For Xenocider, he's got a pretty healthy siege tank count himself as well, as long as he doesn't get caught out of position. If his Hellions aren't busy chasing off the watchtower and actually guarding his tanks, he'll be alright. And one of the big things too is we need to see him get towards that armory. He needs to eventually get those Hellbats out. The one thing Hellbats do fantastically is they've got a lot of health while being light units. They can soak the tank hits. They allow him to deal with drops on top of his own tanks.
Yeah. Indeed, those will be very important for Xenocider to get, so we'll see if he does throw that down eventually, but Xenocider now trying to establish that third, so I imagine Polt wants to try and do something about that, to try and maintain his lead in this game. And Xenocider does pull back, realizing that, you know, he doesn't want to, you know, take damage now, because now he's going to be more spread out. It's going to be so much harder for him to defend, you know, all of these bases, so he's just going to pull back and try and play it defensive. And,
ooh,
you know,
this is going to be rough. Gets caught off guard by these Marauders. They will get on top of those tanks, and a couple go down for free.
Yeah. And I mean, that's Polt for you. He's always so active, because that was just a, you know, a small bioforce that, you know, he was far away from his siege tanks, but he just abused the mobility of, you know, that stemmed bio to try and get something done. And he does find like 2 or 3 siege tanks, and that's a very big deal when, you know, Xenocider needs those tanks so desperately to defend all of his bases. But we see Xenocider now getting that sensor tower in his natural and a bunch of turrets. I like that, because like you said before, you know, dropships is something that can be hard to deal with.
What I'm liking a lot though is Polt, guys, is a really subtle thing. I didn't want to interrupt Namshar, but he's been checking all the corners of the map with his Marines. He wants to make sure there are no hidden bases. I can't tell you how many times players have lost to like Ultra Xen from underestimating that there wasn't a 5th base down, that there wasn't a 4th base down. Both players are legitimately on 3, and Polt confirms that.
Yeah, exactly. And that gas income is so important, because, you know, if you get to a high supply and you have a lot of gas income, you can go for that, you know, I can't even find words right now. Well, so strong air switch that, you know, you want to go for eventually.
It's eventually getting Ravens and battle cruisers. Like, that's what's going to sell you in the late game. But both players got to kind of hold out for them. This is looking pretty bad for Xenocider. He's not in a great position for this. Siege tanks are coming down from the north, but they're not here just yet. Marauders get on top of a majority of this army, and still no Hellbats, just Hellions, which are quite frankly not cutting it. Now, for Xenocider, he doesn't have a lot to clean up right now. Those tanks aren't going to push forward anytime soon. But, yeah, his production was just too low. GG. Polt will take the first series 2-0. Congratulations to him.
Yeah, oh man, just a solid play from Polt. Just, you know, got ahead in this game with that small, you know, siege tank push, and Xenocider is natural, and just didn't lose his lead. And then he saw a weakness and just stemmed in and got the win. So, just solid play from Polt.